Hey guys, Ronen here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about scams that recruiters pull on truck drivers. So we're going to talk about what do recruiters do in order to lure truck drivers in that are misleading and untruthful. So let's get started. Number one thing that recruiters do that I hate, that I see online, is that they post their mileage rate, which is different than your contract rate. So they post mileage rates that are a little bit higher, and then when it comes time to sign the contract, the rates are a lot lower. I get that a lot. Drivers tell me this all the time, and I always point out before signing with drivers that the posted rate and what their signing rate is exactly the same. The second thing that I don't like is that empty miles and loaded miles are paid differently. I think if I'm a driver, I really don't care if I'm driving empty or if I'm driving loaded. I want to get paid X amount of dollars per mile, and I think that's the company's responsibility, whether you're empty or loaded, or how many empty miles you do versus how many loaded miles you have. I kind of like one consistent rate for both my empty miles and loaded miles. The third thing that I hate is when drivers complain about the fact that when they're talking to recruiters, the routes that were pitched to them, like you're only going to go to Texas or you're only going to go to California, when they actually start working, the lanes that they're getting are completely different than what they signed up for. Later on in the video, I'll talk about what you can do to avoid these things, but let's continue with other false promises and misleading advertisements. Models of trucks. So when you talk to a recruiter, they say, oh, we have a brand new unit available for you. And then after you're done your orientation and after you're done basically the whole process and all the paperwork, you've spent about 4 days or 3 days. And then when you get to do your first run, all of a sudden they put you in a 2017 or 2018 model. And you ask them, hey, what's going on? Where's the truck that you promised me? And they tell you that, oh, I'm really sorry. You know, it's in repairs, or you'll get it in a couple of weeks. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the false and misleading sign-on bonuses. Trucking companies that offer a sign-on bonus, usually you should get paid on your first pay is when you should see that sign-on bonus. If somebody's offering you $5,000 for a sign-on bonus, make sure you ask them, when are you going to get paid this sign-on bonus? The things that I hate hearing is when drivers receive their sign-on bonus over the course of a year or over the course of 12 months. That's not right. That's not called a sign-on bonus. A sign-on bonus is what you should be getting right now for signing on to a company. So now the second thing is, what can we do in order to avoid these scams or avoid these traps? Hey guys, my name is Ronen, and I want to personally thank you for watching this video. I am the son of a truck driver and currently working as an operations manager for a medium-sized carrier. Growing up, I heard a lot of complaints about the trucking industry, and now that I'm working in it, I hear it all the time. I wanted to create a channel in order to unite North American drivers, share my knowledge, educate drivers to become more successful, and one day to make a positive impact in our industry. Some concerns that I have in our industry revolve around hours of service, driver compensation, parking for drivers, and safety on the road. These videos on this channel are not meant for recruiting purposes. When we unite, we can make a difference. As me and my team continue to produce high quality and interesting videos, I do need your support in order to make a difference in this North American market. Please subscribe to our channel, and if you like what you see, give it a thumbs up. I hope you enjoy this video. So I'm very, very big on Google reviews. I'm very big on Indeed reviews, Facebook reviews. I really think that we should be doing the proper check on a company before we are signing with them, just to see what what other drivers say, what other truck drivers on Indeed say about them, what other truck drivers say about them on their Facebook page. If they don't have a Facebook presence and they don't have a website, or if they don't have an Indeed account, there's something wrong with that company. I highly recommend that you run the other way. The second thing is, you can definitely avoid these scams by asking for current drivers' phone numbers. So I know that I regularly give out 1 or 2 numbers to a driver within the division that they're thinking of going into. So if you're going into our flatbed division, I'll give you a couple of drivers' numbers in the flatbed division. If you're going into the van reefer division, I'll give you a couple of drivers currently working in the van reefer division, just so you can ask them about mileage, about routes, about pays. You should be very confident with the decision that you're making, and I think that giving out a phone number or 2 of other drivers will give you that reassurance. Another thing I can pick up on a trucking company is based on the yard and their equipment. You know deep down inside, when you're coming into a company, when you see their equipment, you can tell right away if they're a good company, if they're not so good. You're going to be going down the road with that company's equipment. So you better make sure that, number 1, you're proud of that equipment, and number 2, make sure that that equipment is well taken care of. The last thing that you want to do is spend all your time at the scales or get busted for having defective equipment. Another way that I could pick pick up on a company is based on the way that I get the road test. So how was my experience with the road test? You know, was it a professional experience? Was I waiting for an hour? Was it by appointment? I could tell a lot about a company based on the way that I do the road test. If they don't have a road test, meaning that you can get into this company without doing a road test, a proper road test, I recommend you run the other way. There's a lot to say about companies that don't road test their drivers. So it's basically what kind of drivers are in that company. So I don't want to be going into a company that doesn't road test their drivers before they basically just recruit anybody that has an AZ license. Drivers get mad about onboarding requirements that trucking companies have. I kind of look at it in a different light. The harder it is to get into the company, the more elite I feel like their drivers are. So don't get mad about their restrictions or how strict they are with their policies, because I think it's better to go into a company where they kind of filter out the bad, and the way that they filter out the bad is based on their strict hiring policies. So I don't want to go into a company that has drivers there that have 3 months experience and 6 month experience. If it takes a recruiter a long time to get a hold of your references, that's because they're doing a really good job to make sure that you have your 2 or 3 years experience. Another way that I can pick up on a trucking company if they're good, mediocre, if they're not so good, is based on their yard. I like when a trucking company has their yard together with their office. So if their office is in one place and the yard is in a completely different location, I would take the time to drive to that company's yard. You want to see how the yard is maintained. I'm very picky. I like that if I'm going to a yard, I want it to be paved. I hate it when there's those rocks and then there's puddles and those potholes. It drives me nuts. I definitely could tell a lot about a trucking company based on their yard. Another thing, before you sign on board, and I know a lot of drivers don't do this, but you really should be doing this, is you got to check the company's DOT and their CVOR. The reason that I say this is because if a company has a bad safety score, you really do not want to be going into this company, because you're going to be spending all your time with defective equipment, with your truck not working properly, with an air leak here and an air leak there. If their CVOR is bad or the safer is bad, there's something to say about that company and their record. The last thing you want to do is ruin your CVOR and abstract because of a company. A lot of drivers get fooled by that extra 3, 4, or 5 cents per mile. So you'll have company A versus company B. One company is paying 60 cents per mile, the other one's paying 64 cents per mile. Now, I know you think that's a lot on every mile, but if you take into consideration how long it takes to get into a company, or if you take into consideration how much it costs you to switch companies, it's a lot more than those 4 cents. And what I mean by that is the recruiting, that process takes a long time for you to get into a new company. The last thing you want to do is go into a high-paying company that offers you the bells and whistles, and then when you get on board with them, it's really not like that, and now you're back to phase 1 where you're looking for a company again and spending time. They might pay you that extra 5 cents, but infrastructure costs money. So companies that have a shop, companies that have the warehouse, companies that have infrastructure in place, the safety managers in place, that all costs money, and that usually comes out of your rate per mile. So you'll see companies that have a little bit lower rate per mile, but they really offer a lot for their drivers. The building, the shop, the safety managers, again, it all costs money. And yes, the bigger companies do invest a lot more in their policies. They do invest a lot more in the safety of the equipment that's on the road. They don't have any gray areas. There's no such thing as not changing the brakes, or there's no such thing as when a truck tire, once it gets to 30% or it's eaten up 70%, bigger companies will change tires, where smaller companies will try to get everything out of that tire. A lot of times going down to the cord, and then much more likely you are to have explosions on the road. Do not quit your job before you have something at hand. I often see this where drivers are calling and they're like, oh, I need a job right away. How fast can you get me in the truck? The way that I would go about doing it is I would start looking for an alternate position while I'm currently in my position. So don't quit your job until you actually have something in hand. Now, today with the digital world that we have, you can actually go through most of your orientation online and digitally. So you can actually be in your current position, and then in the evenings or whenever you have a day off, you can actually complete the orientation of the company that you're thinking to go into. Try to minimize the downtime that you have between the company that you're at versus the company that you're going into. Downtime can cost a lot for you and for your family. So if you're giving your notice, then while you're working through that 2 weeks that you gave your notice, you should be completed your orientation at the second company. So try not to have a gap between when you stop working versus when you start working, because those 2 weeks, if you're not working for those 2 weeks, it could really set you back financially, and I see it all the time. The last thing I'm gonna leave you with, the last note, is do not burn bridges. What do I mean by don't burn bridges? The company that you're currently at right now, it doesn't matter how long you've been there, whether you've been there 6 months, 3 months, a year, don't burn your bridges with that company. You never know what you're gonna get yourself into. So you can go into a company, leave the company that you are right now. If you leave on a bad note or you don't give a proper notice, the likelihood of you coming back there is not so likely. They won't hire you back. If you leave properly and you gave your 2 weeks notice, I've had drivers, give us 2 weeks notice here, they go and then they come back. And I've also had drivers that go and then we won't recruit them back just because of the way that they left. You really want to be a mensch about it. You want to give your 2 weeks notice, work your 2 weeks, and then go into your next position. And you want to be able to, if it doesn't work out in your next position, you want to be able to call that last employer of yours and have them take you back if things don't work out. So in conclusion, don't fall for these recruiting scams. Vet properly the company that you're about to go into. Take the time to look at the company's Google reviews. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And I'm Ronen, and I'll catch you in the next one.